Okay, welcome back to the channel today. Today we're going to talk about in-floor heat mats and the pros and cons that are involved with each type. So stick around and enjoy the show. How to wire a new residential construction. So there are a few different types of heat mats that you can install electric in your floor space. The first thing you need to do is determine what kind of floor space you're going to put this on, whether it be a concrete floor or whether it be a wood floor. The difference would be in a basement or a concrete area or in an actual upstairs bathroom. Now keep in mind the example we're going to do here today is on a concrete floor in a basement bathroom, and I feel that I needed to lay this just to take the moisture out of the floor because bathroom concrete floors are generally cold anyway, so we want something that's a little warmer in this case. So there are several different types of options that you can go with. At the end of the day, you want to keep it as simple as possible and as cost effective as possible. So the Dieter tile, or the Schluter system, which everybody raves about on the internet, is a great system for multiple types of floors. You can use them on wood floors, you can use them on the concrete floors. They're a little more costly, but basically they have interlinking panels that go on the floor, and then your heat mat or your heat cable would go into that, and then of course pour your thin set, which is your self leveler, and then go right over that with your tile. We're not going to do that in this situation. We're going to use a product that is relatively cost effective. It's made by Pro, and it is a universal floor mat. It comes in different sizes. I will put a link in the description below as to what I can find on the internet for that. Relatively cheap. The floor mat itself, we're doing about 35 square feet. It was only $100 and some. And then the thermostat was that again. The reason the thermostat is so expensive, I'll show you a clip of it here, is because it has GFCI protection. Now, this is very important for any in-floor installation when it comes to electrical. Most electrical codes states that you need to have GFCI protection. If you use a 240 volt floor mat, you will need to have that GFCI protected. Most of the thermostats that come with the 240 volt and the 120 volt are GFCI protected. If you get a model that does not have GFCI protection built into it, and it is 240 volt, then your only option is to use a 240 volt breaker in your panel, which can be quite expensive. So that can be $300 or more for that breaker. That's why a lot of these in-floor heating companies sell 120 volt models, because if you need to have GFCI protection, you can simply protect that with a GFCI outlet back at your panel, which is at 20 bucks. So there's quite a difference in price between the two. So for this demonstration today, we're going to talk about the cheaper version. This Pro thermostat does up to 3,840 watts, so it will handle a full circuit, and it's fully programmable. Now what you get in your box with your universal cable is, obviously you get your cable, and that comes on a roll. So this is not the mat type. You don't just lay the mat down on the floor and be done. You have to string this out yourself. So it's more labor intensive. So what you're sacrificing in lower cost for the cable, you're making up in more labor. So just keep that in mind. If you're a do-it-yourselfer and you're going to lay this, you're going to be into more labor. This actual system comes with the strips that you glue to the floor, and it comes with glue, and this is what you're going to string your cable through. Now they recommend 3 inches for floor heating and 4 inches for floor warming. We're probably going to have a little bit extra here, so we'll see how it works out. But basically you're going to lay these strips, and you're going to lay them apart from one another so that the cable can be strung through along the concrete floor. In addition, the concrete, when you lay the cable on the concrete, you don't want the cable lifting off, because we do need to pour a thin set mortar on here to level it up, and we don't want the cable rising up through the thin set mortar. So they give you quite a bit of glue so that you can make sure you glue down the spots on the floor. So we're in a bathroom. The first thing that we need to do is make sure the floor is clean, which I've done. Dry. Otherwise the glue is not going to stick. You don't want glue lifting and causing air bubbles in your mortar, because that will cause your tiles to crack. So one of the biggest things is you have to have a circuit provided on the wall. And the first thing we're going to do, or I'm going to demonstrate, is we're going to fish the cable wire up the wall to the thermostat, which is the hardest part. And then we're going to string the cable out on the floor from start to finish. I'm going to put this video in fast time so you guys can see it a little quicker. And then I'm going to show the steps with the thin set, and then the tiles, and then the testing. So the first thing out of the box, when you get this floor cable, and this is any type of floor cable, it's going to come with an ohm rating on it. And the ohm rating is the measurement between the two floor cables themselves. So the first thing you're going to want to do is take a meter, and you're going to want to measure it to make sure that it matches the ohm rating on the cable, so you know you're getting the proper size cable that you ordered, and so that there's not damage out of the box. And you're also going to meter, and we'll show you once or twice, after you lay it, after you put the thin set down, and then after you tile. And this is so that you can catch it during any stages if the cable gets damaged. I should note that you should not be wearing steel toe work boots or anything like that that may hook the cable in this situation. A soft sole shoe, rubber shoe or sneaker would suffice, because you don't want to damage that cable, which is very important. So we're not flooring experts, we're electricians. So this is the electrical end of it that we're going to show, which is important to a lot of people. We usually come in and lay these for the flooring guys, and then they come in and do the tile. Now in this example, I'm going to do the tiling, so please be forgiving with your comments as to all your tile experts out there as to what I'm doing wrong. I'm not a pro at that, but it's good enough for me. This is in my basement, so I just wanted to show the process of the actual electric heat cable. So this electric heat cable, as you can see, has quite a long lead, which is going to go up the wall, and then it transitions to the white cable inside, which is actually what we're going to lay out on the floor. So I'll stop the video here, and I'll get the fish tape ready and show me fishing that up the wall, and then we'll start laying the cable. Now, one of the first things that I'm going to mention, this is a cutout that we have at the bottom of the floor here that we're going to fish up to the thermostat. So we have our electrical heat cable, which is the cable that's going to be put out on the floor. And we also have a sensor, which is a floor sensor. This sensor needs to go in front of the door, and what this sensor does is it detects any quick changes of airflow coming through the doorway so that it can turn the in-floor heat on. Some kits come with 2 sensors, some kits come with 1 sensor. The second sensor is usually an extra sensor, and we recommend to put it in case one sensor messes up. It has 2 small wires on it, and the 2 small wires actually go up and go into the thermostat, and that actually needs to go up there because it needs to help the thermostat work properly. If that doesn't get done properly, then the thermostat isn't going to work. So we're going to go ahead and tape these on, and we're going to want as few burrs as we can possibly get on this. And what I mean by burrs is bumps on the cable that will catch up in the wall. So in this situation, and in most situations, you're going to be in a situation where the wire needs to be fished up the wall, because the wall is usually going to be already done. Laying the cable in first with the wall in the roughing construction period of the whole project is not really feasible, because then you have, of course, everything hanging out of the wall and the wires laying on the floor, so we don't want to really do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape this up well, so that there's no burrs on the wire when I go to pull it up the wall, or it doesn't catch on anything, which is important. Now, I have a fish up in the wall. I'm going to pull this down a little bit so that I can get a hold of it, so that I can tape the wire on. Now, when I tape the wire on, I'm going to want to go up a few inches, and I'm going to want to make sure that it gets on there as well, without any burrs, or any bumps, I should say. because it can be tricky, especially through a tight wall, to fish this up. It's one of an electrician's most frustrating parts of this whole process. And just so you know, time-wise, when you're laying this cable, it should take you a few hours to do it properly, instead of just throwing it on the floor. Now, as you can see, I've gone ahead and I've taped the wires on, both the floor sensor and the main heating cable, and we're going to get those up the wall first. So following this up the wall, you can see in the back here, I have a 240 volt wire, which I shouldn't have done, but I wasn't sure what I was going to do first going off. So what I'm going to do is I'll actually tape one of those wires white to indicate that it's actually 120 instead of 240, because this is a 120 volt floor system that I'm putting in. In the back here I have my fish tape, so I'm going to gently start working this up the wall. I'm going to put the camera down and set it back so you can see me doing the process. Now, that went a lot easier than I thought it was gonna, so that's great. We're going to untape the wires that we put on with the fish tape. If we can find where to get them off. So we removed the fish tape from the wiring. Take a little extra time to do that. Don't cut it off, because what will happen is you'll hurt the wire. So if you didn't notice, in the bottom of the box here, I'll show you, I've taken the connector out. That's the little top secret trick for the day. So I've taken that connector out in the bottom and I've left it into the top, and that has allowed me to pull that wire up quite a bit easier. Just a little tip. Now you're going to have to put that, the clamp, not the connector, the clamp back in before you do the wiring. However, it makes it easier in the process to pull it up to the thermostat. So on the floor, now I have a roll of wire sitting on the floor, and I have my floor sensor. So what we're going to do is we're going to position that floor sensor, and we're going to start off the roll, and we're actually going to start gluing it to the floor. Okay, so now that we have the wire up into the wall, first thing we're going to do, that we have the floor prepped, is we're going to put down our concrete floor primer before we do our in-floor heat mat. Now it's always a good idea to check on the correct products and match products up. This is made by Mappy, which is the thin set floor self-leveler that we're going to use. And it's pink, so we're going to end up with a pink floor after it's all said and done. Okay, so I've prepped the subfloor and primed it with the Mappy primer. So now it says I have to wait 2 to 3 hours before I can do any more. So we'll come back and then I can lay my my tile on the heat map on the floor, and then we can do our over pour. Now I've glued these along the floor periodically, just to basically help support the cable on the floor. Now when you're doing your measurements, you should measure, and I think I mentioned this before, but you should measure just the floor space alone, not underneath the toilet or the sink or the vanity or any of the shower or tub or anything like that, just in the main walking areas. Now for heating, it calls 3 inches apart. And for floor warming, it calls 4 inches apart. However, this is a kit we had left over from another job, so it's not quite 35 square feet. So I'm probably going to go with about 5-inch spacing. And I just basically wanted to warm the floor a little bit. This basement area already has ample heat, so this is just to take the chill off the tiles when you get out of the shower. Okay, so the first most important thing is to get this floor sensor glued down. Floor sensor, there we go. Floor sensor glued down in front of the door, and if you'll notice, I put a strip along the door with some weights holding it down because I don't want the thin set when I pour it to go out into the hallway. So let's get this floor sensor glued down because that's important, and we want to make sure it's glued down good. And get it right onto the floor. I'll give that a minute to set up. And then we're going to take the access of the wire and we're going to shove it from the floor sensor up back into the wall because we don't want any extra on the floor, of course, and then we'll glue that down as well just to make sure it's all in place. And at the end of this, guys, what we'll do is we'll go through and just really make sure that the cable is glued to the floor because we don't want it rising up through the thin set. That'll give us high spots and then the tile won't set correctly. So we don't want to get into that situation. So taking a couple extra minutes to glue this down properly is the key. The key is in the prep work, right? Okay, so floor mat's laid, or the floor cable's laid. I've gone a little wider here with my separation. We've got it all down and glued in place. So now we're going to check the wiring before we pour it, and then we're going to do our pour. Okay, so one important thing that you need to do is check the ohm reading that comes in the instructions with the box. This one says about 70 ohms, and then you're going to take your ohm meter, stick it on ohms, and you're going to do an ohm test across the actual heating element wires. So what you're looking for is an actual ohm reading. I'm getting 69.5 ohms, so that's exactly what it's supposed to be. So I'm doing that check now, and then I'm going to do the check again after we pour the floor, just in case there's any problems. I don't want there to be any issues, so that's why I'm doing this. Now, you can get a little thing that clips on here that will go off as an alarm, which are really handy, especially when we have them on job sites and we don't want to keep coming back to meters. So we'll attach one of these alarms on here, and then if there's a break and any portion through the installation process, then the contractor that's doing the floor can notify us immediately so we can fix the problem. So I'll search those on Amazon, and I'll put a link in the description below, but they're really handy. They just clip right onto the two wires and it's an alarm. But I mean, if you're just doing this for yourself at home, I wouldn't really worry about it, but for bigger installations, yeah, it's great. Okay, so now we're getting into the final stages of this project. The floor's down, the tile's down, everything's grouted, and behind us is the wall thermostat. This is a 120 volt version, so we're going to show hooking the thermostat up and how we do it. Now, a couple of important features. When you go to hook up your thermostat, make sure that you understand what voltage it is. It's very important. If you get the voltage wrong, then you're going to run into issues and it's going to probably blow itself up. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the back off our thermostat, and I just want to show you quite clearly that on the back of the thermostat here, if it'll focus, there we go. There's the load on the bottom, which is the yellow, and the line on the top, and it's very specifically marked neutral and hot. So that's important to get that right so you don't get it backwards. It wouldn't be good if you get it backwards. Thermostat simply won't work, and it'll probably blow it up. And this is an expensive part, guys, of the in-floor, so if you don't get it correct, just make sure you read the directions. So we'll take the bottom of the thermostat apart so that we can screw it to the wall. A little screw on the bottom that enables it, or you can take it off and unclips it. It's going to make me look like a fool. Now, in the back of the electrical box, you'll see that there's some spawning screws on the back of the box, so it's important that you get that screw connected to the ground in the back of the box. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Get that around the back. And then the same with the ground from the wire for the in-floor heat mat. Now, just keep in mind that you'll have to shove some of this back down the wall to get it to work. And that's going to go in underneath the back of the screw in the back of the box to bond it on the other side. Now, the access for the ground wire can be cut off short because that's not getting connected to the actual floor mat as long as it's in the back of the box, and it can get tucked right in the back of the box. Make sure it's all the way to the back so that it doesn't come out and hit on the back of the thermostat. So then we're going to take our in-floor heat wires. We're going to make sure they're all prim and proper. And we're going to take our thermostat and our connectors provided in the box, whatever I did with those. There they are. And keep in mind that the plate needs to go over the thermostat first, so you can get it on the wall. And then we're going to go ahead and hook it up. So your load is going to be the yellow wires in this case. So that's actually going to hook to the in-floor heat. So what we're going to do is we're going to twist them in a clockwise manner. And we're going to give an extra couple turns with the pliers. And we're going to clean the edges. And then we're going to put a marrette on it. Or a wire nut, some people call them. As per se. So we'll make our first connection. Make sure the wire nut's on there good and tight. And then we'll hook up the other side of the mat. Or the floor cable, I should say. And that other yellow wire is going to go on with the other side of the mat, which is the black in this case. Again, just follow the directions on your manufacturer specifications, and that will help you guys out. This would help if I turn some more light on, wouldn't it? There we go. Okay, so that's the load side. Now the line side is extremely important. Like I mentioned, it has L1, which is L line, and L2, which is neutral. And it shows you right on the thermostat which is neutral and which is line. Now in this case, the neutral is our white wire. If you're wondering why this is a red wire taped white, it's because originally we thought this was going to be a 240 volt floor mat or floor cable, but it's actually 120 volt. And the reason we decided to go with 120 volt was because of the GFCI protection. So this thermostat has GFCI protection right in it. So anytime you're in a bathroom, you should have that GFCI protection. The 240 volt model didn't have GFCI protection, and we would have had to supply a GFCI breaker, and the breaker was about $400. So that's why we didn't go with the 240 volt. So we kept the wire, and we just re-identified it as 120 volt so that we could use it. And last but not least, we're going to hook up our black power wire. Make sure it's all good and tight, and then we're going to tuck it in the back of the box so that these connections can all go in there. Sometimes they can be a little finicky, so you want to roll them back into the box the best you can. And then we're going to bring the center wire out through, and we're going to mount the box onto the wall, or the plate onto the wall, the backing plate. And the screws for that are right here. And I'm dropping them. There we go. Handy screwdriver. good. Get started. So I should mention on the back of this, there are two little clips right on the back of the thermostat that have push-in connectors. And those two little clips is where you're going to put your sensor. And that sensor needs to be hooked up in order for the mat to work correctly. So right on the back of the thermostat, I don't know if you can see it, but right here, whoops, right here on the back, there's two little clips. You probably can't see it real well, but they depress, and this is actually where you stick your sensor wire into. So these are your two sensor wires, and they're just going to shove in there. And I'm going to take a small flathead and just depress that pushing connector, or the pushing connectors, to make sure that they get in there properly. And then give a little tug on it to make sure it's not going to come out. It's actually quite simple. It's just apply a little pressure, and then they'll slide right in. There we go. They're both in there. So now we're going to put the thermostat into the wall. And sometimes this, because the thermostat has quite a big back on it, it takes a little bit to cram the thermostat in there, and you don't want to break it. And I should also mention that if you know that beforehand, what type you're going to buy, you should look at investing in a deep style electrical box so that all of this will fit inside of the wall, which is extremely important. So on the top of this thermostat, it just hooks on. It should snap right into place. Of course, actions are louder than words. Oh, yeah, that's got to go up in here underneath. There we go. So the top clipped in, and then the bottom should shove right in and push in. There we go. That's what we want. And then we're going to tighten our screw down. Okay, so as you can see, here's our finished floor, finished product. Everything is all cleaned up. We have the tile on there. And then here is our finished thermostat on the wall heating, set at 21 degrees. So that was a lot of info in a real short period of time. Remember your key features, what kind of floor mat you're getting, what we would run to it for power, proper preparation on the in-floor. Make sure, especially on concrete, that you get that primer on there and an approved self-level thin set. And then your tile on top of that. And generally, like I said, 3 to 4 inches of spacing. I know we went a little further on this one, or we ended up going a little further apart on this one, but in the end, it's just my place and I wanted to use the floor mat up. So again, I'll put links in the description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.